Welcome back, friends. In this video, we're going to talk about the 3 biggest mistakes that people make in their MBA application. So I know the MBA application can be pretty much daunting, but I want to just tell you the biggest mistakes that people make. These are mistakes that even myself, I was about to make before submitting my application, but then thankfully through talking to coaches, mentors, and successful people who were able to get in, I was able to correct it for myself. So then I want to share this with you so you can do the same. All right, let's get right into it. So mistake number 1, and that is over-indexing on career and stats. What does this mean? So a lot of people go in trying to showcase that they have the best GPA in the world, or that they worked at the top consulting firms or in private equity, or they worked at Apple. And usually showcasing just that is not enough. Because let me tell you this, there are actually more consultants, bankers, people who work in tech than there are spots for top 7 MBA programs. So if you are targeting some of the top programs, I honestly think that just focusing on your career is not going to be enough. And actually, let me give you a quick stat on this. Almost 30% of the top MBA programs are filled with consultants. So if you think that only your consulting experience will be enough for you to differentiate yourself, unfortunately, you are wrong. So you need to be able to differentiate through other means, and over-indexing on your career may be one of the biggest mistakes that you might end up making. What should you do instead? Well, try to focus on reflecting on your story and trying to showcase a personal side to you. This is, I think, something that a lot of people are hesitant about. Whenever they get asked the question on like what matters most to you, or like tell me a little bit about yourself, people dive straight into their career and achievements, and your essays should not be a regurgitation of your resume. Instead, try to showcase that you have a different side to you, because that's going to help you stand out more than just the typical achievements at work. And I even see this when it comes to the stats and the grades, where people are already at a pretty good spot. For example, someone would have a 3.9 GPA, but then they're trying to go all in to try to improve the GPA from 3.9 to 3.5. At that point, once you're already at a high enough GPA, it doesn't really matter. So like putting all of your effort into improving your grade is not going to be worth the time. The same thing happens on the GMAT side. I see people have like a 730 or a 740, and they say that I want to apply only if I have a 750 plus, and they have a month left in the application. So instead of focusing on the essay and the personal side, they go try to over-index and try to get a higher GMAT grade. So all in all, my recommendation here is, while it's still good to showcase your career and your stats, try to add a personal element to it so that you can stand out. Now on to mistake number 2, and that is faking it to fit in. I see this happen all the time. And usually what people try to do is they try to fit their profile to mold into some form of like stereotypical profile for a school. So for example, I see people who say Wharton is known to be one of the best schools for investment, and although they have nothing to do with investing whatsoever, they write their entire career essay about how they want to become a private equity investor, or they want to invest in startups through VCs. And while this might bring you as a closer fit to the school, what it actually does is it weakens your application, because you don't have a lot to say when it comes to your experiences in investing, for example. Rather, you might have a lot more when it comes to entrepreneurship, so maybe you should focus on that instead. Another example that I see this in is in the Harvard Business School 2+2 application, where there are a lot of people who are not necessarily going into technology or operating roles, but they write their entire essay about how they want to go into tech. And I can tell you this, the admission people have done this for so long that they can already tell what's a genuine story versus not a genuine story. So if a lot of the things don't add up in your general profile and some of the decisions that you made in the past, they will be able to sniff that, and they will likely not give you that acceptance. So instead, what you should focus on doing is being authentic and having a clear same story for all of the schools. So for example, if your story is about becoming an entrepreneur in the education space, but then there's no technology associated with what you want to do in the future, and your background is not in technology, then just because you're applying to MIT or Harvard, for example, you don't want to just showcase that, hey, I have all these cool experiences in technology, and technology is where I want to go, because these schools like explicitly say that they're looking for that type of profile. Instead, you should still keep it authentic and say that you want to go into the public sector, or you want to do a nonprofit, but still be within the education space. That is a lot more powerful. And now on to mistake number 3, and that is picking the wrong recommenders. So here's the thing with letters of recommendation. People often want to go for the people who are like the most senior out there. And I think that this is just straight up wrong. Because what happens is when you pick someone who's extremely senior that you have not worked with directly, what ends up happening is that they write you a generic letter of recommendation, either because number one, they're busy, so they don't have the time to write you the best letter of recommendation, Or number two, they haven't worked as closely with you for them to write a detailed letter of recommendation that's very personal and unique to you. So when you think about your letters of recommendation, I honestly would recommend that number one, you pick people who are like very close to you, who you had a lot of experience with. And then number two, people who are willing to go the extra mile and like back you up in the letter of recommendation. Because if you pick someone who's busy, or if you pick someone who doesn't necessarily care about your application, trust me, that will show in the recommendation, and that's not going to be a good look on the application. So next time you think about your recommender, don't think about who's the most senior, think about who you have the best relationship with. All right, so all in all, let's try to wrap this all up. Recommendation number one is try to reflect on your story. Number two, try to be authentic and don't fake it for the school. And then number three, try to pick the right recommenders, because picking the wrong recommender could hurt your application quite a lot. And that's all I have for today. I've been trying to make my videos a lot more direct and consistent, so please let me know if you like this new format. But in the meantime, I'll catch you in the next one.